Today on High Value Hustling Podcast, we are sitting down with someone who radiates purpose, peace, and passion. Arianna is a Christ follower with a heart on fire for helping others, especially when it comes to understanding themselves and, more importantly, understanding God. She's passionate about counseling and education and has a dream of either becoming a missionary or one day opening her home to teach young women about Jesus and life skills. She's also a talented photographer and is preparing to leave for a missions trip to Africa very soon. I'm excited to get to know her better right alongside all of you. Arianna, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Very excited to have you on. Are you able to give us just a quick intro of who you are? I know we just gave you a little bit of one, but I would love to hear more from your perspective. Who are
Yeah. So, of course, I am a firm believer of Jesus Christ, and I am a Word of Life Bible Institute alumni, class of 2023.
you?
I'm a college student at Owens Community College studying psychology and counseling.
Amazing. Cool. I first got in touch with Arianna through her brother, went to crew with them for a little while. Always, there's people that you grow up with and you vaguely know them, but not really directly. Just a few weeks ago, I saw a Facebook post. Arianna was like, "Hey, we're going to Africa." Well, you are.
Yep.
And she's feeling called to the missions field, and that's just very exciting. And I just love to see people that are not old that are on fire for Jesus, and because that's rare, especially in like your hometown. Because I think everyone has social media, and they're like, "Oh, that person in that state far away is my age and on fire for Jesus." So I think that's really cool. What is something that you are loving right now? A book, about a verse, a hobby?
Are many things that I'm loving right now. The first thing I would have to say is a book called Lord Change Me by James MacDonald. And it just talks about how change doesn't come from ourselves, but it comes from the power of the Lord. And in order to accept that change, we need to be willing. We can't be holding on to things. So that's definitely something that I have been loving and reading. Let's see. First Peter, I've been going through that in the Bible and I'm absolutely loving it. Things about the Lord, about surrender and the importance of deciding to love life every single day
Mm.
because our God is in control. And then my last thing is
Yeah.
I've been listening to this worship song called Jealous Love by Seven Hill Worship, and it's so good. And it just reminds me that God has a jealous heart for us and wants all of us.
That's good. My sister's going through First Peter. Actually, no, she just finished that. She's in Third Peter, right? There's three.
I think they're actually maybe.
Two Peters. But yeah, that's good. And you mentioned like God being a jealous God too, all throughout the Old Testament. He's jealous for us, and we don't even realize that.
Yeah.
We forget it so often. You mentioned that book about change.
Yes.
What inspired you to start reading a book about change?
Well, great question. So, last year, I was in Indiana and I was just coming out of my year at the Bible Institute. And I was in this relationship and I was also going through a lot of like life circumstances. And when I came home, I was just like sitting and reflecting and I was like, this is not who I want to be. Like, yes, there was good aspects, but there was also a lot of characteristics that I was like, this is not godly or like glorifying to the Lord. And I got this book like way back my sophomore year of high school and I never picked it up. And I was like, what better time than to do it now and allow the Lord to change me?
That's good.
Mm.
That's good. There's this book that is not by a Christian author. It's this book called Wanting. I don't know the author, but it just describes like very simply, like all the book in a nutshell of how most of us want certain things because we want to mimic how other people are doing. He names it like mimetic desire. It's like that's so interesting, but it's so true because we grow up always seeing our parents wanting to mimic them. We
Right.
grow into adulthood wanting to mimic people that are always in a better spot than us. And then you forget, like, is this really my decision or is it everyone's impact on me that I'm doing everything that I'm doing?
For sure.
So it's good. My favorite question that I would ask people, may you please share your testimony with us?
Yeah, I would
Right.
love to. All right. So I would say I grew up in a Christian household and like I grew up going to church. Um, Around the age of 7, it was during Sunday school. They were like, oh, if you believe in the Lord, like, let us know, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, I do. I didn't really understood what that meant.
Mm.
I just kind of like knew of Jesus and I met Jesus and I just kept living life after that. Like I would occasionally write in like my journals and be like, "Oh dear Jesus, like help me with this." And then we ended up moving, and it was around my middle school year. And I was so focused on what people thought of me, what am I going to do to impress people? I want to make a good first, impression. And so that just led me down like a really dark path of, finding fulfillment in a relationship with people in the sports that I did, kind of like an identity crisis, I would say. And it led me to be super angry and just so confused and lost. And it wasn't until my sophomore year of high school I was quote unquote forced to go to a snow camp. I wasn't really forced, but it was free and I felt obligated to go. Like we couldn't have our phones or anything like that, and it was just a great weekend because by the end of it, I think that's when like Jesus really met me because he just really showed me like the way that I was living was wrong. I'm not alone. Like my sins don't necessarily define who I am, like it is the Lord who does.
Yeah.
And I was all like, okay, God, like we're gonna change this around. Like we're not gonna live for myself. We're not gonna seek out people's like satisfaction of me and
Yeah.
everything. And so I came home and I was super on fire for the Lord. I'm like, Mom, like this is what's gonna happen and blah 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 blah. And so I guess just ever since I've really just been trying to live and please the Lord. And it's been a bumpy like road, but
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's life is like no one's perfect. And so yeah, it's just been a beautiful journey of learning my identity in Christ.
Because I know your brother,
Yes.
you watched him in his relationship with the Lord. How has he influenced your relationship with Jesus?
Yeah. So he has invited me to crew multiple times. And I was like, no way, not going. I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, but he was just like, no, come on, come on. And I think he encouraged me in that way because it allowed me to find fellowship with other believers. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think like I would be able to, not that I wouldn't be able to, I don't think I would have found my people or like believers around me so easily if I didn't know about crew.
Wow. I was talking to someone about this last night. When the Pharisees came up to Jesus while he was preaching at the temple,
Yeah.
they said, "Teacher, what is the one law or commandment or the most important commandment of all?"
Mm.
Do you remember what he said?
That's what it is.
Yeah. How did he respond? Do you remember?
I think it was something like obviously love the Lord your God above
Yeah.
all else, and
Yeah.
then love your neighbor. It's just
Nice job. Give me some.
it's
You got it. That's exactly right. I was talking to this person last night, and I said, Jesus really answered that question, what is the most important
Mhm.
commandment of all time, incorrectly, because he answered with two things, not one.
Right.
And I know I'm getting somewhere with it. A pastor preach on this. He said, why would Jesus include that if it wasn't vital to your
Mhm.
Christian walk? Yeah, because I know for me personally, when I've grown up in the church, I'm like, okay, the church is cool, but
Yeah.
it's an individual relationship with Jesus. Is the church required for a relationship with
Mhm.
Jesus? I don't think so. But my perspective has really changed on that when I've realized how much people are there for you when you're going through seasons of grief, of loss, of suffering, pain, whatever it is. You can't pull yourself out of that, which you shouldn't. You should always go to Jesus for. But just having people just there for you to support you is so important.
I mean, we were created by God for fellowship. It goes all the way back in Genesis,
Yeah.
Like when God made Adam, he was all like, it's not good for man to be alone, and he brought you along. So that's just
Right.
like, yeah, picture of starting a fellowship.
That's awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing your testimony.
Yeah.
I do have a couple more questions on that, right?
Yeah.
So your brother is how many years older than you?
3.
3 years older. Wonderful. And you've seen his walk with Jesus, and then going to this Christian college for a year, and coming back and wanting to just be all about Jesus now. What has this done for your friendships that are around you? Has there been any changes?
Changes. The only change would be, I guess, meeting new people. I definitely have lost a lot of friends along the way because of
Yeah.
like my decision, which was kind of hard because then you feel isolated and alone. But because of my brother's influence and encouragement of going to crew, and I'm just kind of feeling like I have to restart all over again, it has also allowed like beautiful new friendships to form and for me to get to know other believers.
Awesome. What are some key moments in your walk with Jesus that really shaped who you are today? It could be any moment, any time, even before you believed in Jesus, that he did whatever.
Okay. Yeah, so I have two, I believe. And the first one was back in September of 23. I lost my Nana.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was a very tough and challenging time. And I was right in the middle of like working a full-time mission. And like the director was all like, you gotta come back, like when are you coming? Blah 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 blah. And so I had to leave earlier than I wanted to. So that was really challenging, and there was just a lot of like I could not sleep for, days or whatever. But then one night in the middle of like my brokenness, I saw in my Bible reading Psalms, I think it was what is it? 73:26. And it says, my flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. And that gave me such encouragement because it's just like it's not all of my own. I have to overcome this, And like, although the pain didn't like vanish, like there was purpose in the pain that, God brought me in. Yeah. So he just showed everything to me in like a new lens. He showed me how vital and valuable people's lives are.
Yeah.
And at this time, I was working with kids. And so I was all like, these kids aren't just kids. Like, yeah, they're going to grow up, but their eternity and where they're going to end up matters so much.
Yeah.
So that was just like a life altering like thing in my faith from the Lord. Um, the second thing also is about Indiana and the kids that I had there. I had a whole bunch of like, I had like 20 second graders alongside me and this one counselor. And there was like these three girls who were just all like, we want to start a Bible study and blah, 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 this stuff. And mind you, they were like 7 years old.
Really?
Second graders. I was all like, no way. Because when I was 7, I was probably running around outside, not giving like a care in the world.
Right.
And so they start like planning, like, oh, we're gonna have it at this day, and these are everyone who's invited. And I was just like awestruck because what 7-year-olds are gonna do that? You could just see like their hunger and like love for the Lord. There was one girl, she, by the time of like the end of the internship, she was all like, my mom wants to meet you and have you over, and so we can talk more about the Bible study.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to, but before I left, she gave me this note that I keep in my Bible and I read all the time. It says, don't forget to read your Bible. I will miss you. And I'm just like, oh, like, it's just such a sweet reminder that, like, yes, adults influence children, but how often do we think about that kids actually can influence us in our faith and our walk? So it just that whole time there and that whole situation just beautifully displayed what childlike faith looked like to me.
Wow. That's such a beautiful answer. Jesus, yeah, wow. I know that Jesus tells us, like just like you said, like childlike faith is what God encourages us to have all the time. And yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. Like that, like it's awesome. It's so cool. That's cool. When was the time of the second with the girl giving you that?
Yes, so that was probably, I think, in the spring of 24.
Hmm.
So probably around.
When did you first feel called to missions or ministry?
Yes, so I actually never thought I would go into missions or ministry, but as long as I could remember, I've always wanted to do something like meaningful and impactful, but I just didn't know what that would look like. Blanket. I think it was probably when I went to summer camp up in New York and I saw how much my counselors invested into my life, and they were just so intentional with everything that I said and everything that I poured out to them. And I was all like, man, like this is the purposeful meaningfulness that I'm looking for in my life, like what I want to do. So yeah, and then just ever since like realizing that, I think that was summer of 21, the Lord has just opened doors for missions. I've been to New Mexico
Wow.
since that moment, serving as camp photographers and all of the above. So yeah, I think it was during my time at summer camp.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think some people can be called, but they don't know for sure and they never know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm pending on the reason why, but I think, can you repeat your question?
I think I'll phrase it differently.
Yeah.
So there, I think there's good things that we can do for God that glorifies God, but God's not in it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make.
An example of this would be, let's just say a church has a worship team, and you could hire a much better team, but maybe their relationship with God is not as reflective. Is this good thing for to have better like singers and this stuff? Yes. But does it but is God like if the current worship team is already spirit filled and like God doesn't care how good or bad your voice is, he just wants it to be maybe that's a bad example. So but I do want to say like I think there's times in our life like so often where we're questioning what's the next thing?
Mhm.
What do we do? And then
Yeah.
we ask God and we hear nothing back. And I think that's what's supposed to happen
Mhm.
more than often so that we can increase our faith and say, okay, I don't hear an answer, God, but I still trust you because your character is pure and
Yeah.
it's good. Therefore, I'm going to take this step in faith,
Mhm.
not knowing,
Yeah.
knowing that this is good. A mentor of mine, and who's still a mentor of mine, would always tell me, he said, very few times will you know for sure exactly that it's from God. I mean, he's like recounting from his own life. He says the best way I can describe it as praying and seeing that God opens doors and closes others. And
Mhm.
he's like, sometimes you just know the doors are opening up in such a coincidental way that it's no longer coincidental. And
Yeah.
that's Jesus. And other times he's like, there's some resistance, but then there's a breakthrough. And sometimes it's just like slam door that you cannot get through. And you're like, God, I thought this is what you wanted. But he's like, "No, there's a better way. I have a
Yeah.
better plan for you."
Mhm.
All that to say, even if you're like, I know that summer camp experience had a big impact on you,
Mhm.
but even if you're not for sure, it's okay.
Yeah, for sure. I also think just during those times, what your heart posture looks like
Mm,
has a big
yeah,
effect and play into that. And also going back, having that piece of this isn't working out or oh this is like
yeah,
it kind of helps like give you that leeway of where God is directing you in that.
that's good. That's good. You are passionate about counseling and education.
Yes.
Where did that passion start?
Okay. Well, again, funny thing, I never wanted to go into counseling or education. I always thought I would like do something like higher up, if that makes sense. But God kept pulling my heart back to people,
Mm,
especially kids.
yeah,
My passion for counseling started at Word of Life. We had our Days of Women there, and she's all like, I want to invite all of like the girls or whatever in like my suite to just come over and we're just gonna hang out and she ended up having like cookies and all these sweet stuff there, and it was just such a intentional time of fellowship and reading into the word that I think I've only experienced that once while being there. And also like there's so much beauty in this and like glorifying the Lord in this. I want to be able to take this what I've experienced and learned and be able to share that with other girls. So I think that's where counseling comes in a little bit. Also, I have a heart for hearing people and
mm,
like what they're going through, and I want to be able to point them back to the Lord
yeah,
in that, you know. I mean, obviously, like help their problem if it's possible, but I mean, only the Lord can really, see through on that. When it comes to education, when I was in Indiana, I worked in the schools and I worked as a after school club counselor and I had to teach lessons and I was like, no way, talking in front of people, not my gig.
right.
But during that time, I figured out I loved lesson planning. I loved getting the kids involved and whatnot. And I was all like, I could teach. Like, I could definitely see myself like teaching at Sunday school or, all the above because, yeah, I don't know. I just love it. It just brings so much joy and fulfillment. And like when you see the kids like reciprocate what they're learning and showing everyone, it's such like a sweet feeling of how the Lord is working.
That's awesome. You just mentioned you said, which I don't think I've heard from many people at all, of how you have a heart for listening to people.
Mm,
And that, like, as I was just hearing you say that, it just reminded me, who else wants to be heard more than kids, right?
sure.
Because as a kid, you feel like overlooked a lot,
Mm,
right? I mean, depends on the age too,
yeah.
but if you're, I don't know, maybe 15 or younger, you don't have much experience, can't drive yet.
Yeah.
You're in
Yeah.
school at the time, so it's like, oh, I don't have much to say, or people don't respect what I say. And so to have someone that's older than them be interested or willing to listen and just be like, wow, thanks for telling me that. They don't get that.
Mm-mm.
They don't. Their parents maybe like,
Mhm.
but a lot of families don't have that either.
That really showed through during my time in Indiana because a lot of these kids came from like poverty, single parent homes. A lot of their family were in jail and whatnot. And so they were
Yeah,
just really looking to just be loved and to be heard. And I was like, Lord, like, this is what I feel like the strongest in. And just being there again, it's just, he showed me that that's such a path that he wants me to go down.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
Cool. Take a breather. Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Do you feel like you're like forcing anything, or you feel like you're okay?
No, I actually because like I typed all of it out,
Yeah.
and like I know I'm not gonna go based off of the script.
Good.
So just looking at like little key points, it feels so much more natural to me than
Yeah,
just
yeah.
being like, oh, I realized that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I need to adjust my mic anyways. I'm like, I feel like I'm bending over on it. I'm like, not gonna work. Man, I'm gonna force my kids to sit up because I feel like I've slouched.
That's actually not like a pet peeve. It was a pet peeve of mine, like slouching, but it has to be like excessive, like
Oh,
this
sure,
kind of
sure.
slouching, But I'm also afraid I'm gonna end up like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, like
Oh,
when I'm old. I don't want to be that.
that's the only play I've seen in person.
I've never seen it. Like I've seen a Disney rendition.
I wouldn't recommend.
Okay, noted.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. I think you're doing very well.
Okay.
So, by the way, also, this is still part of the break and stuff, but look at long way out. We'll have a camera here and a camera here so that it's not like a side face profile. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
That's how you get started, right? But yeah, just letting you know.
Okay.
In the future, when you come back after
Oh,
your
when I come back, part two, I've come back.
once you die.
War. Well, I have nothing else to say, but I will be done.
Die.
Yes.
Yes, your punishment camp. Okay. Yeah. I love this question too. Okay. So love this question. You are passionate about wanting to teach girls about Jesus and life skills. Can you paint us a picture of what that dream looks like to you in your mind?
Yes, I can. Okay. So the absolute dream would be to be involved in a youth group
Okay.
and disciple girls within the youth group, but at the same time schedule one day outside the week for them to be able to come into my home and just kind of chillax and be themselves and to dig into the word and obviously to enjoy some sweet treats because who doesn't love that? And yeah, they would just be able to have a time of fellowship together.
Yeah.
And the ultimate goal would be to have a space where they can build real fellowship, grow in their faith, but then also take what they've learned and applied and do it for someone else to disciple, someone else down their road. So that's the dream. That's the hope.
Wow.
Yeah.
And primarily in your own house, inviting people in,
Mhm.
right? What kind of snacks or things?
Yes, so we will definitely have tea. We can have coffee for those, who like coffee. Definitely like cookies. Hopefully they'll all be like handmade or yeah, handmade. Yeah, anything that the girls want. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. It's cool to have like that dream. You already kind of know. Yeah. As far as like you've seen this, so briefly going back to I'm gonna take that out. I don't even know where I was going with that. Blah. Okay. How do you use photography for like as a creative outlet? Do you use it for ministry at all? If you don't, like what how else do you use that?
Yeah, so truth be told, I don't see photography as a creative outlet at all. For myself,
Okay.
yes. It's really hard for me to see it that way. I see it more as a ministry, and I think that could just because that's how I first saw it when I got into it. I the reason why I see it as a ministry is because you have the camera and you're able to capture life-changing moments for other people that they will be able to hold on to and reflect on and be able to share with their family or future children or families except my time at Word of Life during our like snow camp season, we had this thing called a buy statement and it was basically like every camper's next step with Jesus is by blah 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 blah. And so for our marketing team, I love it. We said every camper's next step with Jesus by sharing the joy of life impacted, yeah, by Christ. And it was basically saying we are helping campers take their next step with Jesus by being able to capture this moment for them, and just how Christ is working in their life. Yeah.
That's awesome. If there's someone right now that has photography and they love it,
Mhm.
but they don't see it as a form of ministry, what advice would you give to them for like incorporating God in it or I don't know.
I think my advice would be to just remember that everything that you are doing is for the glory of God and that just because you have a camera in your hand, and you're using it for creativity, you can still share the gospel and use that as a light. There was this time I was photographing a wedding up in New York, and they were like, "Oh, are you from here?" I'm like, "No, I'm from Ohio." And they're like, "Well, how did you like get up here?" And I was able to share about Word of Life Bible Institute and just how Christ has been working in my life and using photography.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Wow. Shifting gears here, you will be going to Africa here
Yeah.
shortly. How did that come together?
Yeah. So great question. I was going to, or I went actually to win a conference this past winter, and I kind of like knew the Lord was putting on my heart to do something with missions, but I was all like, maybe I should just stay home and work and kind of serve in my church that way. Um, but by the end of, win a conference, I was like, okay, like mission somewhere, I don't know where. A couple months later, we had missionaries come into our church and they were expressing about how their mission trips and what they will be doing and whatnot. And it just all kind of clicked right there. Like, I was so sure it was like international. I'm like, okay, Lord, like,
Yeah.
you got it. Like, that's where I'll go. But then I was like, where? So I found this organization called Student Fusion, and there were multiple different trips, and I was between Honduras and South Africa.
Yeah.
And I thought Honduras was the trip because I was like, I'm learning Spanish and it's specifically VBS and kids ministry. I'm like, yeah. But then I saw South Africa and there was just like a heart pull, a heart tug on that.
Wow.
I was like, oh, I don't know, because we got like door to door evangelism, not really my thing. But